Tasha's talked about the signs of labour, so things to let you know that you're going into labour, and I'm going to talk about the stages of labour from now. So there are 3 different stages of labour. You can see on the board behind me we've got the latent phase, and so that says early labour, mild contractions, and then underneath it we've got the first stage, which is regular contractions through to fully dilated. So I'm just going to talk about these 2 different little stages. So for some of you first-time mums, you will experience this latent phase, which is where we kind of see that you're in labour. Your contractions will be happening. You might be feeling them in that low down on the front kind of pain, or you might be feeling it all in the lower backache. But those contractions will be happening irregularly, and that they wouldn't be happening all day long. They might be happening just for small chunks of time. Often the latent phase with these contractions, it happens in the evening. So you've been busy all day, you haven't really noticed much change, but when you sit down in the evening, finally to have a bit of a relax, you might notice that your tummy is really starting to tighten, and you might start to move a bit with those pains, where you start to rub at your tummy or you start to rub at your back, and then it triggers you to think, oh, maybe these are actually contractions. And so if you're thinking that if they're starting to get a bit painful, then start to time them. And so what we say is that initially in latent phase, that might be quite long, time in between the contractions, it might be 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes before you feel another contraction, and that they would be quite short. And so a full, in labour kind of contraction, we want them to be lasting from beginning to end about a minute. And so when I'm talking about short contractions, they're only lasting sort of 10, 15 seconds and then easing away again. And so if that is happening, if they're short and if there's big time frames in between each contraction, then you're going to be in this latent phase. It does get quite exciting when you start to feel those initial contractions, and you start to get excited about, oh, maybe this is finally it. If it's fun and exciting, we say that you're not in labour, unfortunately. You can absolutely phone your midwife. You can be telling her what's happening, and we really like it when it's phone calls rather than texts, so that we can actually hear you, talk to you personally and ask you what's happening for you. We can tell heaps from those phone calls, which I'll show you a little bit what kind of things you're listening for and looking out for in your phone calls. But we're definitely, for the latent phase, you're staying at home. Sometimes we get people that have 1 contraction, they've got their bags packed and they're at the hospital ready to have a baby. We would be sending you home if you came to the hospital after 1 contraction. So staying at home, making sure your people are around you, so your support people, that they're there and that you're relaxed and you're comfortable, and just keeping an eye on what's happening, making sure for baby's movements, trying to figure out if your waters have broken or not, but resting. Often women start to race around and do lots of jobs, writing lists for things that they want to do, repacking the bag, going for a walk, that kind of thing, but you actually need to conserve your energy. So heaps of women that I know that home birthing or on 2nd or 3rd baby, they actually sit down and watch a bit of TV. So watch something that you binge watch something, watch a movie. So you're sitting down relaxing, because if you spoke to your midwife, she would say have some Panadol and go back to bed, try and get a sleep. But when it's your first baby and it's so exciting, the last thing you feel like doing is going to bed and having a sleep. So if you can't do that, then sit in front of the TV, drink lots of water. My midwife told me to get Powerades, and so you're drinking something that's got a little bit of sugar, some electrolytes in it to just give you that bit of energy that you need. But eat really good food, drink lots of water, and sit and conserve your energy. Keep an eye on what's happening, but resting. And then you just wait and see what happens. But for most latent phases, you do take a bit of Panadol eventually, head off to bed, and you wake up in the morning and nothing has happened. It's totally boring when that happens, but at least you've had some sleep overnight. And then you might find at the end of the next day, it starts again, this latent phase. And I think this can be quite tricky when you have a few days of latent phase, because it takes your energy. And when you're in labour for real, you want to have as much energy as possible for that. So staying home, eating and drinking, really important. So some of you will experience a latent phase, and some of you won't get the latent phase at all. You'll go straight into the first stage of labour, where your contractions are coming regularly and they don't fade away, and your body starts to get into it. So it's quite different, your first labour, as opposed to if you're on your 2nd or 3rd baby. With your 2nd and 3rd baby, your body's already done this process, it knows what it's doing, and you don't tend to have the latent phase. So the first stage of labour is regular contraction through to fully dilated. And so a really important word for this bit is regular. So when the contractions are regular, that's when we're saying that you're in this first stage of labour. The other thing that comes along with the first stage of labour is being 3 centimetres dilated. So if your midwife has done a vaginal examination and we know that your cervix is doing that softening, shortening, opening up, and she's getting 2 fingers inside your cervix, then we say again, first stage of labour. So the regular and being 3 centimetres dilated. Okay, so for lots of first-time mums, what we say the time frame for the first stage of labour is that hour or 2 of contractions gets you that centimetre further ahead. So what we're looking at is 7 to 14 hours in the first stage of labour. And often people think, oh my gosh, that's such a long time. Some of you will actually do it much quicker than that. Some of you may take longer than that. And if it's taking longer, then your midwife will absolutely be helping you. There's things we can do, like things to speed up your labour, and also pain relief options, because you'll be tired if it's taking that long. So midwives will never leave you for hours and hours and hours in labour without doing something to help you. Women love when they find out that you're pregnant, especially for the first time. You let people know I'm pregnant and people are excited for you, but then they start to very quickly tell you all the horror stories about labour, and people love telling you how long their labours were, and you'll hear these really long hours, like 36 hours or 58 hours in labour, and people are counting this latent phase in with this first stage. So from the very first contraction to having a baby. Whereas midwives, we are counting it from once you're in the first stage of labour. We're counting it from then until you have a baby. So please don't worry about how many hours you're in labour for. A midwife will absolutely do things to help you if it's taking a long time. Okay, so for this first stage of labour, a lot of it we're really hoping that you do at home. Okay, so you definitely be calling a midwife, but she won't necessarily be coming to your house. It just depends on your conversation with your midwife, where she is, what she's up to, and she'll decide if she comes to see you or if she actually says, look, come on up to the hospital and we check you out. Sometimes we get you in, we check you all out, and if you are only 3 or 4 centimetres or even less than that, then we might send you home again with some good ideas of things to do at home. But for a lot of this first stage of labour, we do want you to stay at home. There are heaps of things you can be doing at home. So still the drinking, the eating, lollies can give you a bit of energy. You can hop in the bath or the shower if you've got those at home. Water is amazing pain relief in labour. So you can either have the shower running over your belly or you can have it running over your back if you're feeling that lower backache. But sitting down on a beanbag, if you've got a Swiss ball at home, sitting on that, doing some movements, getting somebody to give you a bit of a back rub, playing some music. There are lots of things that will just keep you relaxed and calm at home. If you are ever getting anxious, then please call your midwife. That's absolutely what they're there for. And so if you're thinking, should I be at home, should I be at hospital, phone them and ask, and they will help you with all this decision making. We totally get it that this is your first time in labour and you don't know. So use us, phone us. So regular contractions, they do start off quite short. So you're sort of just getting through 15 or 20 seconds of a contraction, and then as your labour heats up and as you get more and more into it, your contractions will start lasting a minute from beginning to end. And so Natasha drew that picture of a wave on the board before, and so absolutely the first little bit is doable. Getting through that peak is hard work, but then you'll feel that contraction easing off again. And then we really want you to just relax in between. Take some big deep breaths, have a drink of water, and just try and rest in between before the next contraction comes. And then slowly you'll work out a way of coping through those contractions. With midwives, we can tell a lot what's going on with you by your phone calls. So if you're anything like me, with my first son, I was super excited to be in labour because I was 10 days overdue. I just wanted this baby to come out. And so when I finally started to feel some contractions that were painful, I was that person phoning my midwife and saying, "Hi, it's Monique, and I'm getting contractions, and this is super exciting." And she was excited for me, absolutely, but she was like, "Okay, this is pretty early stuff, Monique." She's like, "Definitely don't come into hospital." But I just wanted to tell her what was happening and that things might be starting. And so they will absolutely check through things like, is the baby moving? Do you think your waters have broken? Who's at home with you? Are you comfortable at home? That kind of thing. They'll check in with you. If you are fine, you've got your people around, you're happy to stay at home, which I was happy enough to stay at home, then she'll leave you to it. And she'll say, "This is when you call me back again." So I think I did a few things at home, like I hopped in the shower, hopped in the bath, tried to rest a little bit, and things did progress. And so my next phone call to my midwife, I was a bit more in labour and it wasn't quite so fun and exciting. So my next phone call, I was like, "Hi, it's Monique." I was like, "Oh, these are not so fun now." Oh. I was like, "Oh, here comes one now." Whoa, yeah, that's definitely stronger. Whoo! Okay, that one's gone. And so when you're talking to her on the phone, she'll be hearing you say, "Oh, here comes one," and she'll start timing in her head how long they are. And if they are short, if they're only that 10-15 seconds long, we see those as short, you stay at home. If you are also talking through them, then again, that's indicated to us that those are okay contractions if you're chatting through them. Okay, so there's lots we tell on the phone. So I was at home for a bit longer. I was just there at home with my husband. I was completely fine. And I just kept labouring. And my next phone call to my midwife, I phoned her up and I was like, "Oh, it's Monique." And she said, "Yeah, I know it's you." And then I said, oh, hold on. These are not so fun now. I was like, "Oh, hold on. Whoa, there's one now. Oh. Okay, so I was quite noisy. In labour I was quite vocal, and I don't know why, but I needed to make those noises. And it helped for whatever reason. But you can hear that my contractions were lasting a bit longer and I had stopped being able to really talk through them. When you can't talk through them and you're really having to focus, women get in a little bit of a zone with contractions, and usually they shut their eyes, nobody can talk to them. Nobody can ask them questions, they just have to get through that contraction, and then once that contraction's eased off again, then they open their eyes again, they rest, and people can talk to them, they can make noises, whatever. But with contractions that they're having to work hard through, shut their eyes, back into that zone again. Okay, so some people get really vocal with contractions and other people are completely silent. Okay, so you don't know what you're going to be like until it's you on the day doing it, and either is completely fine. Sometimes we do get people doing funny things with contractions like swearing, so we get lots of swear words in labour, and if they're pretty tame, midwives are usually pretty good with those. We hear some colourful words in delivery suite, but sometimes people start to scream and yell, and that is very much from American movies, where in American movies women are yelling, swearing, it's drama. That is not often what women do, especially up here in Northland. If you are screaming and yelling, it actually uses a lot of energy for your body to do that. And so that is a time that sometimes midwives will say, actually stop doing that, and they redirect you to doing something else. So you're not using up all your energy making all the noise. But swearing is fine, mooing like a cow is fine, being completely silent is fine. Just where you'll find your little groove with your contractions. Okay, so I think at that stage when I couldn't talk through contractions and my midwife could hear that on the phone, they're lasting a bit longer, she came and saw me at home. I was planning a home birth anyway, but she came and saw me at home. I was about 4 centimetres dilated and I was all good, and she actually left me again, and I was fine with that. So midwives will make those decisions along the way and tell you what they're going to do. I can't remember what I did in between. I think we got the birthing pool set up. I started sitting on a Swiss ball, that kind of thing. But my next phone call to the midwife was very much, hello. And all she could hear in the background was me going, as I went through the contraction. and it was loud and I couldn't talk. And when she heard that, she was like, okay, I'm coming over. Okay, so yeah, we can tell a lot by your phone calls, and we really like it when it's you women that phone us. Often we get partners or other support people phoning the midwife and saying, oh, this is what's happening with her now. And then your midwife will ask you lots of questions, or the support person lots of questions, but then they'll say, actually, can you put your partner on the phone so I can hear her? And so we can hear what you like on the phone to help us make that decision making. Okay, so the first stage of labour, you are just getting used to these contractions, finding your groove with what you do with every single contraction to help you cope with it. And research has shown us that women that get into a rhythm of doing the same thing with every contraction actually cope better with labour. So if you find something, a movement, a noise, whatever, that is helping you, keep doing it. Don't stop. If you're unsure of what to do, ask your midwife. She can give you lots of different ideas of what to do, but keep doing it. So it's really fascinating being a midwife and seeing what women come in labour and do. And so if you're planning a hospital birth and your midwife eventually says, right, come on up to the hospital and we'll see what's happening. So when that is happening, she will phone ahead to the hospital, let them know that you are coming. She'll see what's happening with the room situation up there. If you're planning a water birth, she'll make sure that the birthing pool rooms are available. And so just let the staff know that you're coming, which is much easier on the staff if they're prepared for you to be there. And then your midwife will quickly make her way to the hospital. If she isn't there, by the time you get there, at least the other staff will know that you're coming and they'll be prepared for you. But usually your midwife is there waiting for you. And so when we're there and we know that you'll come up to the back door, usually you push a buzzer, we know it's you, we come out and we greet you at the back door. And when that door opens up, we wait and see what we see. So sometimes women, if you're not having contraction, you just walk in as normal, and then all of a sudden you start to say to us, oh, hold on, here comes a contraction. And usually you cannot keep walking and talking when you're having strong contractions. So usually you stop, you lean on your partner or something, and usually your eyes are shut, and we like it when women are standing upright with contractions. It helps your pelvis, it helps the baby. So gravity is helping the baby go down through your pelvis. And in American movies, again, women are often on the bed, legs up in stirrups, and they're trapped to the bed. If everything is going fine with you and your baby, we don't like you being trapped to the bed. We like you upright and moving. Okay, so if you walk in, there's a few things that women do when they're having contractions. When you're standing up, and automatically you do this, we don't tell you to do it, but you get a few different types of movements. So a really common one, so you say, oh, here comes a contraction, you lean, you shut your eyes, and you start doing the side to side. And with the contraction, you're hopefully doing a big deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just keep going with those big deep breaths the whole way through the contraction. It is a really natural reaction for us when we're sore to hold our breath and to tense, and we want you doing the opposite with contractions. We want you to relax your body, take big deep breath in, big blow out through your mouth. And often support people are amazing at reminding us to take big deep breaths. So using your partner, using your support person, getting them to do those big deep breaths with you is really helpful. But then if a movement side to side is helping with a contraction, then do that. So the side to side is quite common. So is the Mr. Bean, I call this, the backwards and forwards. Okay, and then another really common one is the hula. And so with the hula, it usually starts off quite long and slow. And then as your contractions get a bit stronger, the hula gets a bit quicker, until eventually you might be eyes shut doing this full-on hula really quickly. If you are doing a movement and that helps you with your contractions, keep doing it. Does not matter how much of a weirdo you look on the day. We don't care. If it's helping you, keep doing it. Okay, so but we like women upright, we like people moving, so you can be walking up and down our corridors, and we have these huge birthing pools, and we have 2 of them in Whangarei Hospital. They take about half an hour to fill up because they are so big, and women that have hopped into those say the pain is halved when they're in the water. So we really recommend using the water. We have showers in all of our rooms, so if the birthing pools aren't available, you can just stand in the shower. We have endless hot water, so just stand in there, have it running down your back. All that kind of stuff helps, so just try it. We have some pretty funny people that come in labour sometimes where you don't really know what's going on for them and how they're coping in labour. We had this really hilarious couple that came in one time, and she kind of walked in front of him and he walked in behind her with quite a distance between her and him. He was holding the bags and he just looked petrified. He looked so scared and was staying away from her, and initially we were kind of like, what's going on? Why is he staying away from her? And then she got a contraction, and when she got the contraction she turned and she looked at him and she was quite scary. And her whole process with every contraction was telling him how much it hurt and how much she hated him for doing this to her, and this is all your fault. And then she'd ask him to come over to her. She'd say, come over here, and he would be looking at her like, I am not coming over there, because she was quite scary. Okay, and so she was quite scary. He looked quite afraid of her, and as soon as she popped out the baby, she was back to her normal loving self. So another thing we say to partners and support people that are at a labour, do not take what they're saying personally. They do not mean it. When they're in the throes of a contraction, they can say some pretty weird things, so don't take it personally. So for myself in labour, in my first stage of labour, as my contractions got stronger, I got myself into a bit of a position, and I'm going to use my workmate Natasha to show you how I ended up looking and sounding and things I was doing in labour myself. I ended up in the middle of our lounge with a birthing pool set up that I never even ended up hopping into. I just didn't end up having the energy or the space to be able to get in there. But I ended up right by my coffee table. I had my Powerade there, I had a drink bottle there, I had some of those little chocolate eclair lollies, and I would munch away on those and then spit them out when I was having contractions. So it just gave me that little bit of energy. I also had the couch there, and my husband Alan was sitting on the couch. And he had a massive grin on his face because he couldn't believe that we were finally in labour and going to have a baby. Eventually I had to tell him, I was like, stop smiling, this is not much fun for me. But it was really nice to see him excited about us being in labour. So my husband's name is Alan, and so he became part of my process with every single contraction. So every time I really felt my contractions in my lower back, hardly at all in the front, but all in my lower back, and it would just slowly increase as it got to the intense bit of the contraction, then you'd feel it wear off again. And so every time I had a contraction, I had to go through the same little routine. I would start by saying Alan's name, so I'd say, Alan. And that meant that he had to hop up off the couch, come over to me where I was down on the floor. So I had a pillow underneath my knees, I had my Swiss ball, I was resting on it when I didn't have a contraction. As I felt the contractions come, I would lean forwards. When I said Alan's name, he had to get this part of his palm, and I felt all my contractions in my lower back. So he got this part of his palm and he just pushed on my lower back. So standing over me, using his weight, pushing into my back. And that felt amazing. That was all I needed through every single contraction, that pressure on my back. And then I would, and I don't know why I did this, I ended up having to tap it out with every single contraction, and then I had to moo like a cow. So fortunately, my neighbours were far away from me, so hopefully nobody could hear me because I was loud. Okay, so we'll go through my little process with every contraction. Also being down and leaning forwards gets the baby into a really good position. So midwives really like it when you are leaning forwards with your contractions, okay? And so my little process with my contractions was Alan, he would come do my lower back, I'd start to tap, and then I'd start mooing. And the mooing would start off with a and gain in intensity. And then that relief at the end when you felt that contraction just ease away again was amazing. So I don't know why. I don't know why I had to tap. I don't know why I had to make so much noise, but it helped me. Saying Alan's name helped me. Him pressing on my back helped me. So if you are one of these people that's completely silent, be silent. If you have to do a weird movement, we do not care how weird you look or how you sound. If it's helping, keep doing it. Just a little tip for support people that may be in the room with you when you're in labour. They cannot ask you questions when you're in the middle of a contraction. They cannot ask if you're okay. They will get the evils and they'll be told to zip it, because a woman cannot respond to questions when she's in the middle of a contraction. She's in her little zone. But when she's in her little zone, it's really helpful too if nobody in the room makes any noise. Okay, so if you have got a partner that is going to start like munching on a biscuit, or start flicking open like a newspaper or a book or something, or start flicking or clicking on his phone or something like that, that will be annoying. So another thing that people can do is they start to open up like a packet of chippies or some biscuits, and lots of this starts happening as they're opening up the packet. If you're doing that when she's having a contraction, she will give you the evils, and they get quite scary when having contractions and you're being annoying. So if you look at her and she's looking annoyed at you and you don't even know what you're doing wrong, just stop. Stop doing it. It might be that you're breathing too noisily, so just stop breathing until she has finished the contraction. As soon as the contraction eases away, you can go back to doing whatever you want to do. But with contractions, stop. You'll get in massive trouble. So well, you would have seen with Natasha and I just then the different little movements and noises and things that I did in the first stage of labour with my first son. And so just explaining a bit more about the first stage, your contractions will get longer, they will get stronger, they'll get closer together, and at some stage you'll transfer into the hospital if that's where you're going to go to have your baby, or if you're intending to stay at home, your midwife will just be with you, watching you, waiting, checking in on the baby and yourself. You just manage to cope through the first stage of labour in each contraction, but then eventually as the midwife is saying they're getting longer and stronger and closer together, that means that your labour is progressing. She might be doing those vaginal examinations every now and again to just check your cervix and see what's happening. But then at the end of the first stage of labour, and you can see on the board here we have this extra word here called transition. And so that's another sign to us that you're getting close to being ready to push your baby out. And transition is a bit of a cruel bit of labour, I think, because you usually cope really well in the first stage of labour, but then when you're getting to close to transition, you stop coping. And everything starts to get a bit hard. And in your head, instead of thinking, okay, here comes another contraction, I can do this, you start thinking that you can't do it anymore, it's too sore, you can't do this, you need some pain relief. You start thinking about having a cesarean, an epidural, all these things that haven't been playing in for you up until now. And in transition, women really struggle. They start to look like they're not coping. And I really feel for the support people in the room when transition happens, because often they stand there looking at the midwife going, oh my gosh, what's she going to do now? She's not coping. And you look at the midwife and the midwife stand there going, hee. Because usually transition is a really good sign that you are really close to the second stage of labour. So if you start asking for pain relief, your midwife will do a vaginal examination, start saying, yes, you can have it, or she might say, look, we're too close, we'll talk you through this and get you through this next little bit of transition. A couple of other things that can happen at the end of first stage to let us know that you're ready to start pushing out a baby is that if your waters haven't broken, they go with quite a big gush, usually with the strength of the contractions. You start to tell us that you need to go to the toilet, so number twos, or you start to give us kind of pushy noises instead of the kind of noises with contractions. It changes to more of a kind of noise with contractions. And if midwives hear that again, we get pretty excited. So you get that real pressure down below. So losing the plot, starting to make different noises, and you might be getting really close to second stage. Midwife does a vaginal examination and she'll either say, yep, we're close, or she'll talk to you about it if you're not. So I've talked about the first stage of labour, and so what's happening inside your body with the first stage of labour is you've got your uterus, your contractions would have been getting longer, stronger and closer together, and so this pink bit here is your uterus. The light pink bit here is your cervix, so that's the opening to your uterus. And your cervix sits down inside your vagina, so that when midwives are doing vaginal examinations, when they're putting their fingers inside your vagina, what they're hoping to feel is this cervix, and that it will be that long and hard and closed in the beginning stages of labour. It'll soften, shorten, and open up as you're having those contractions, until eventually your midwife is putting her fingers in, and as her cervix is opening up, she's actually feeling the top of your baby's head. And so she's feeling the baby's head, and then she's moving her fingers around and then stretching her fingers open to get that measurement of how open your cervix is. Okay, so in the first stage of labour, when you're feeling those contractions, it's this uterus that is contracting, it's squeezing the baby, pushing the baby's head down on your cervix, and that helps the cervix to open up. All those contractions, the baby's head would have been sitting up high in the pelvis, and then as you're labouring, the head works its way further and further down through your pelvis, until eventually, when we're doing vaginal examinations, it's really easy to feel the baby's head, and that when we move our fingers around, we can't actually feel your cervix. And then we know that you're 10 centimetres and ready to start pushing. You might also have been giving us those noises of kind of noises to let us know that you're ready to start pushing. And so this is the second stage of labour, and that is from fully dilated to the birth of the baby. Okay, and so in the movies, women start to push, and within a few minutes they've pushed the baby out. In real life, for a first-time mum, this can take up to an hour to push a baby out. It's quite a different feel from the first stage. The first stage of labour, you're just coping through the contractions. In the second stage of labour, you can actually use the contractions and be pushing with them, and it feels like you're doing something with the contractions, and often it's actually an easier part of labour to cope with. And so what's happening initially, so sometimes you'll get that urge to push, sometimes women don't, and if you don't get that urge to push, your midwife will talk you through it. So basically, when you feel that tightening, the contractions starting to come, we usually get you to take a big deep breath in, put your chin down on your chest, and you hold on to something or someone. So you might be holding on to the bed or behind your legs, holding on to somebody's hand, and we get you to push down into your bottom. And when we initially tell people to push, and it's your first baby and you don't know how to do it, often people do it a bit wrong, where they think the baby is coming out through their vagina, so they need to push at the front, but it also gives you the feeling like you're going to do number twos, that you're going to do a poo, and people freak out about that feeling, and so they often clench their butt cheeks and try and push at the front when they're pushing, and people give us a really weird kind of, am I doing it right? And you're not. So you need to push like you are doing the most humongous poo of your life, and it feels like the baby is coming out your bum hole. It does not feel like it's coming out the right hole even. Okay, so big hard push down into your bum, and when you push like that, you are pushing right. Okay, so big deep breath in, push down into your bum. When you need to take another big deep breath in, big deep breath in. If the contraction is still there, then push down hard again. Okay, and it doesn't matter what position you're in. You can be forwards on hands and knees, you can be using the bed up at the hospital, you can be in the shower, in the bath at home, wherever. Your midwife will work around with you, and just listen to her. She'll guide you through this next little bit. So without a contraction, you do need to stop and rest, regain some energy, have a drink of water. When you feel that next contraction coming, big deep breath in, push down into your bum. And what's happening as a first time mum when you start to push, so this is all happening inside your body. You can't even see anything happening on the outside, but you push and baby's head comes down through the birth canal, but you can't see it on the outside. In between, without a contraction, it rocks back in again. So nowhere near as much as this, but just to show you what's happening. With the next contraction, you push, 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 the baby's head comes down, in between it rocks back in again. And so you have got a bit of a curve to your pelvis, and you've got to get that baby around that curve and make it come forwards and stay forwards before you even start seeing the top of the baby's head. So initially, with all that pushing backwards and forwards, you feel like this baby is never going to come out. It will. You just keep doing all those big hard pushes like your midwife will be telling you to. Eventually, as you're doing those big pushes, the baby's head comes down and we start to see a tiny little peak of the baby's head on the outside of your body. And so if you think about my fingers as your labia, the parts on the outside of your vagina, when we can start to see the little bit of the baby's head, your labia just open up a little bit. We see that little sliver of the baby's head, but then again in between, without a contraction and without pushing, it rocks back in again. Your midwife will get super excited when she starts to see a little bit of the baby's head. Often she gets your partner or a support person to come down and watch what's happening. If you want to go down and have a look, you can. If you're like, I'm staying up by your head, that's fine too. You don't have to watch. But she will be down there watching the whole time, and we're just slowly helping you guide this baby's head out. So at this stage, when the baby is still doing that rocking backwards and forwards, it is big, hard pushes, as hard as you can. And so eventually we get more and more of this baby's head showing itself. So it's big, hard pushes until eventually your baby's head comes out and stays out. And then your midwife changes what she says. And instead of those big, hard pushes, we get you to stop pushing, and you really need to listen. You'll feel like giving an almighty push and just getting this over and done with, but you need to slow down and stop pushing. When the baby's head is out like this, you can see with my fingers how much your perineum, so you've got your wheeze is coming out the front here, you've got your vagina, you've got a piece of skin, and then you've got your bum hole back behind there. So the perineum in between your vagina and your bum hole is the piece of skin that is stretching up to allow this baby's head to come out. We know that if that piece of skin stretches slowly, you are less likely to tear and you're less likely to need an episiotomy. So you really need to listen to your midwife, and if she's saying stop pushing, stop pushing. So people may have heard of something called an episiotomy. It was done routinely, probably quite a number of years ago. These days we only do it if we have to. Midwives and doctors can do episiotomies. And if we can see that this piece of skin isn't stretching up the way it's meant to, then your midwife can it's a special pair of scissors, and we cut off to the side of your perineum to give that the room to allow the baby's head to come out. We only do that if we absolutely have to. It's done in a very controlled way and nothing that you need to think about. Your midwife will sort that out if she has to do it, but it doesn't happen routinely, which is great. But if you listen to her, she'll be watching this piece of skin and making sure that it just slowly stretches and allows this little baby's head to come out. When you have got this much of the baby's head out, this skin is stretched up in a way that it's never had to stretch before, and it stings. So you get quite a burning sensation with your skin when it's stretched up like this. It's not very nice, and again you feel like giving a big push and getting it done. Don't. Just slowly ease this little head out. And then when you get to this bit, you got the little head out, the stinging goes away, which is a massive relief. So it was the hardest bit, is getting the head out. When they pop out, they absolutely do not look like this. Don't use this doll as a way of thinking, yeah, they come out nice and pink with their eyes wide open going, hello. They don't look like this. So if you've got partners or support people down there looking and watching, they are not nice and pink. They are a purple or a kind of grey kind of colour. They often don't have their eyes open. They've got their eyes shut. Sometimes they don't move, they don't make any noises, and often partners, if they're watching, they start to freak out that there's something wrong with the baby. There is nothing wrong with the baby. They've still got the cord attached, they're still getting all the blood and oxygen that they need. Okay, so you get this little head out, that burning sensation goes away, best thing ever. And then without a contraction, your body and your baby are very clever. Just against the bones in your pelvis and against all your muscles, your baby will turn without a contraction. They turn, they decide which way they go. They either turn to face one thigh or the other. The midwife waits to see which way they turn. Once they've done that turn, then your midwife can put her hands on the baby's head. And when you say to us, oh, here comes another contraction, and we say back to that big push again. So with the big push, your midwife has her hands on the baby's head, and we can help you with this next little bit. So you're pushing hard, we deliver one shoulder, the other shoulder, your baby's head does not come off like that, it stays on. And you give one last big almighty, and out comes the rest of the baby. And that push is the best push in the whole world. When you feel the shoulders and the bony bits of the baby sliding out, and the contractions go away instantly, and you are instantly out of that zone of having contractions and looking at your baby, figuring out what they are if you don't already know, and just gazing at them. And it's amazing, that little bit of the labour. So usually, once you've got the rest of the baby's body out, then your midwife has got a dry mat that wherever you are, she'll set that up. So deliver the baby onto that dry mat. A second midwife, whether you're at home or at hospital, would be in the room. They have nice warm towels. We bring the nice warm towels over and we give the baby a nice rub down with the towels. And so that's a really good way to get them breathing, crying, doing everything that we want them to do. They used to hang babies upside down and whack their bums. We don't do that anymore. It's a nice rub down with a nice warm towel. We get rid of that first towel because it gets quite wet. Second nice warm towel in and just give them a nice rub down. A baby can take a little while to start breathing and crying and doing everything right. There's massive changes going on with their circulation, with their breathing, with clearing all that fluid when they're being born from their lungs. And so they've actually got a minute old before we even start looking at their colour and stuff. So we want them to be, by a minute, going nice and pink, starting to breathe and cry, opening their eyes and looking around. If they're doing everything right, then once we've dried them a little bit, then we try and get them up onto mum's chest. And so you can be naked having a baby, or you can be in your own clothes, you can be in one of the hospital gowns, whatever you are comfortable being in. But if you have got a gown or something on, we get that out of the way, and you're nice and warm from all this hard work you've been doing pushing this baby out. And so up onto your nice warm chest. That starts the skin to skin and the bonding straight away, and it also keeps the baby nice and warm. So they're on you, skin to skin, covered up with nice warm towels, and straight there in that position. I think it's incredibly unfair that when you've just done this massive job of pushing a baby out, you still have another job to do, which is the third stage of labour. Usually when you're holding the baby, just initially for the first few minutes, you will have no contractions, you have a bit of a break from all of that, but then slowly you'll start to feel a bit of pain in your tummy again. Usually you say to us, oh, I can feel a bit of crampy pain in my tummy again. And that usually means that your uterus, that's had a bit of a break from pushing the baby out, is starting to contract again, and that is to get the placenta out. So you've got the baby, you've got the cord, and inside this uterus you've still got your placenta. So there's a couple of different ways of delivering the placenta. If you've had a nice, natural, normal delivery, then your midwife would prefer you to do the placenta naturally as well. Naturally, it can take up to an hour to get the placenta to come out, so 25 minutes to an hour, but we don't give you any drugs, we don't do anything to help you, we just wait for your body to do its job. So when you're feeling that contracting and crampy kind of pain in your tummy, your uterus is contracting around the placenta, and your placenta has been attached to the inside of your uterus while you've been pregnant. After you have a baby, you have a rush of hormones that makes that placenta separate. When it separates, you've got this whole raw area here on your uterus that bleeds, and so you can have quite a big gush of blood after the baby's born. When we see that gush of blood, we are thinking as midwives that placenta has separated, it's ready, you start to get those crampy pains, and we think, right, this placenta is ready to come away. So with those contractions, you can get up and move around. Sometimes it's better to be on hands and knees and upright, and you're just using those crampy pains yourself to push the placenta out. If you're doing it naturally, the midwife can't actually pull on the cord. You're just using your body to push, and it's quite a different sensation, the placenta coming away, because it's quite soft and warm, and it's got quite a wet feeling as it comes, because it often comes with a big gush of blood, and you push out the placenta. And so average placenta is about this big. It's quite thick, it's quite meaty looking. Then the top bit here, this is the bit that's been attached to the inside of your uterus. This bit looks like liver, and it's quite bloody. So that bit's been attached there, and then the baby has been inside the uterus there with the cord attached. So when you push that out, like I say, it usually comes with a bit of a gush of blood. we can cut the cord and get that separated before you push out the placenta. And another thing that can actually help the placenta come away is breastfeeding. So before you even get the placenta out, if we can see that your baby's starting to do this and look like it's hungry, we can actually get the baby breastfeeding. And when the baby breastfeeds, it sends around hormones that makes your uterus contract, and it can actually help you get the placenta away. So we like it when the baby breastfeeds to help that come away. When the placenta has come out, or when we're ready to cut the cord actually, sorry, I go back to cutting the cord. So you can have just the baby out, and when you're holding your baby, if you put your fingers on the cord, if it's just the first few minutes after the baby's been born, you'll feel it pulsing. So your placenta will keep sending this blood through to the baby for like 3 to 5 minutes after the baby's born. So if you put your fingers on the cord, you'd feel it, and then all of a sudden you'll feel it stop pulsing, and instead of being quite red, it goes quite white as that blood has emptied into the baby. We call this delayed cord clamping. So if you want to, you can wait for that to stop pulsing, and then the midwife will put a clamp close to the baby's belly, another metal clamp down here, and then whoever's going to cut the cord can cut the cord. And so if your partner or support person is going to do it, tell them it is like cutting through garden hose. It is tough. Okay, and they're not going to hurt the baby, they're not going to hurt mum, there's no nerve endings. They get handed a big pair of scissors and you have to chop your way through the cord. Okay, people often start off doing it quite gently, but you need to hack away at it a bit to get through that. Once you get that separated, you've got a bit easier access to the baby. And then mum might need to push the placenta out if she hasn't already done that. Once the placenta's out and once mum and baby are all good, your midwife will go and check your placenta. She can do it in the room with you if you want to have a look at the placenta, or if you're not interested, she can take it to another room and do it. But it is quite interesting to look at your placenta and see where your baby's been living and growing for that 9 months. They check the main part of the placenta, they check the bag, and they have a good look at the cord. So if you want to, you can look at that. And then your midwife will ask you, would you like to keep your placenta? And the bulk of our placentas up here in Northland are kept by the families. So if you say, yes, I'd like to keep it, we have a look at it, then we bag it up into plastic bags and into a brown paper bag that we label quite clearly placenta, because most people take them home and put them in the freezer until they figure out what they're going to do with them. So, and most people in Northland actually bury their placentas. So if you've got a piece of land, your own land or family land that you want to put the placenta in, you go there, dig a deep hole and cover it up, and you can pop a tree or a plant on top of it. And it's just a nice little keepsake for your placenta and your baby. If you don't want the placenta, you can say, and they just throw it away. Okay, so if that all happens naturally, that's cool. If you need a bit of help to get the placenta out, there is an injection of a hormone that we can give you, and that can be a discussion that you have with your midwife, whether you do that or not. And there might be times when she's actually more keen to give you the injection if your bleeding's a bit heavy, if you've had sort of interventions throughout your labour, she might be more keen to give you the injection. The injection is a synthetic hormone that makes your uterus start to contract around the placenta, and then when she's given that injection, your midwife can actually pull on the cord and help you get the placenta out. If we give you the injection, that's about 5 to 25 minutes before your placenta's out. If you are bleeding a bit heavily after the baby's born, we really like it if we give you the injection, because once that placenta's out, then your uterus can contract and stop any bleeding that's happening. So the injection or doing it naturally. Another thing that after the placenta is out, another little job that midwives have to do is to check your perineum. And we try and do this quite quickly after the baby's born because it hurts less. Okay, so you might have the baby on your chest, they might be feeding, or you might just be holding them. Once the midwife's got the placenta out, she'll ask you if she can lay your bed flat. So flat on your back, we again pull your knees up and out to the side. Sometimes we shine a bright light. And we're having a look at your vagina and your perineum. We do need to put a glove on, and we put a little bit of gauze around our fingers. We have a look on the outside of your vagina, but we also put our fingers just inside your vagina, and that's checking the inside of your vaginal wall because sometimes you can tear on the inside. We need to do those checks, and we would put in stitches straight away if we needed to, if you have torn. They always put in a lot of local anaesthetic to make sure it's completely numb before they do anything like that. It is uncomfortable when the midwife is checking with her fingers, so again, you can be breathing on the gas if you want that. Once she's checked all that and you're all good, we put the most humongous pad in the world between your legs, and then we finally leave you alone to enjoy your baby and hopefully start feeding them if they aren't already. And that's the third stage of labour.